Whoa! Whoa! Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Whoa, girl, settle down now. Come on, here. My name is Constable Archibald F. Inkster of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I'm proud to be a long-serving member of Canada's National Police Force. And contrary to what you may have heard or read, RCMP does not stand for Roman Catholic Members of Parliament. Whoa, girl, whoa. Did I mention my faithful horse's name? It's Belinda. I picked her up last year at the Royal Winter Fair in Toronto. My old horse, Harper, has been put out to stud. He's rolling in clover now, I'll tell you. I named this new mare after that billionaire Frank Stronach's daughter. They're big horse people, you know. And they're always at the fair. Last time I was there, I saw the same thing I see every other year. A bunch of horses showing their arses to a bunch of horses' arses showing their horses. Whoa, girl, girl. Here, settle down. Stay. Now, I have to apologize for that strict security check that you've experienced. But as you know, it's a new world out there today. You just cannot be too careful. Like the fellow who frisked me at the airport the other day. He frisked me and patted me down and patted and patted and patted. Finally, I said, "What is it you're looking for?" And he said, "A lasting relationship." Now, you know, I recently traveled all across this great country, meeting some of the friendliest people on earth, a land of outstanding natural beauty, a country of majestic mountains, sparkling lakes, verdant forests, towering cliffs overlooking sandy beaches and raging rivers. And you know, from the briny, wind-swept air of the coastline of the Maritimes, through the waving wheat on the never-ending prairies, to the awesome wonder of the snow-covered mountains, the Rockies, I tell you, makes me proud to be Canadian. And you know, I started my cross-country tour by flying to the West Coast. And you know, to understand British Columbia, you have to visit some of the smaller places, like Dog Creek. Yeah, a village too small to produce an idiot. The Dog Creekers took up a fundraising drive to bring one in from Victoria. Ha-ha, Victoria, a beautiful seaport with a sewage system that is the envy of Afghanistan. Victoria with the magnificent provincial legislative building right there on the harbor and an M&M store 2 blocks away. And what a sight this thing is at night. There are hundreds and hundreds of lights on, but there's nobody home. And then I was off to the mainland, to beautiful Vancouver. Now there's a seaport city that Easterners just love to visit on their way to Nanaimo. Yeah, home of the cute little bars and various other tarts. Nanaimo. And now think what's north of British Columbia. The Yukon, where Dawson City is the place you'll find up there where John and Betty have a store. And I'll tell you, this one time, this was a place filled with wine, women, and song, and gold. Now what will you find? One lonely prostitute, and she's a virgin. See, when the money ran out, they had to shut Dawson City down back then. Now, if only Ottawa could learn from this. And now we have beautiful, beautiful Alberta. Alberta, now say, here's the province that gave us Stockwell Day. Now, when an American asks, what is Stockwell Day, you tell them that's the day Canadians go to the liquor store to get ready for the long winter. Alberta is also home of the world-famous Calgary Stampede, during which a cowboy tightens a cinch right next to a horse's groin and then expects the horse to be delighted to have the cowboy sit on him for several seconds. The animal rights people are demanding equal opportunity for the horse. And Alberta, of course, is home of country music. Who can ever forget that big hit, "It's hard to kiss the lips at night that chewed your arse out all day long." Or, "How will I miss you if you won't go away?" Remember this one? "I'm so miserable without you, it's like you're still here." Or that great hit, "If the phone don't ring, you'll know it's me." Alberta, proud to be the province that gives the rest of the country gas. And then we went off to beautiful roll on, Saskatchewan. Who can forget the words of the great explorer, Lever-Andre? When he first laid eyes on that magnificent expanse of land we now know as Saskatchewan. Maudite que c'est plat. In English, is it ever flat, eh? Now, this is the province where you'll find the city of Moose Jaw. Yeah, named in honor of Brian Mulroney. Remember that Red River Valley, Manitoba. Ah, there's a province. It's so cold there that politicians keep their hands in their own pockets. It's so cold there that instead of yelling freeze, Winnipeg cops just say go outside. And then we come to southern Ontario. Now here's a heavily populated part of our province, and it's a huge province where you can find small towns all over. We'll have an animal shelter, a Burger King, a bowling alley, and a pizza shack, all owned and operated by the same undertaker. And then there are the big sophisticated towns like London. Yeah, because of its location, London has no choice but to compete for tourism with Ingersoll. London is home of the deep well from which half of Canada's culture flows, Labatt's. And then, from there I went off to Leamington. Now, there was a man was fired from his job at the local pork and bean canning factory there. Apparently, he was caught packing the beans in the can upside down. Turned out the customers were all getting the hiccups. And then I arrived in Kitchener-Waterloo, home of the second largest Bavarian beer bash, Oktoberfest, and the famous Schneider's Red Hots. Now, that reminds me of a true story. There were these two Rotary Exchange students who came to Canada from Newfoundland. They were two brothers. Stay with me. And they lived on the northernmost tip of the rock. They'd never been anywhere in their lives. They'd never eaten anything but seafood. And now here they were in Oktoberfest, or in Kitchener, having a good old Oktoberfest-style barbecue. When asked what they were having for lunch, when they asked, they were told hot dogs. So that was fine. They were cooking up the hot dogs and putting them in the buns and wrapping them in napkins and passing them out. And the one boy took his hot dog and opened it up and stared at it real hard. And then he turned to his brother and he said, "What part of the dog did you get?" Northwest of Kitchener-Waterloo, of no significance at all other than it's the place I was born, my hometown, Harriston, Ontario. Yes, now I tell my friends, if you ever find out you only got a year to live, you want to do it in Harriston because it'll feel like a lifetime. And then I moved to Stratford, home of the great Shakespearean Festival, where you might be greeted by an usher who would say, "Do you know where you are sitting, or do you need me to help you?" Shakespeare is English, that was Canadian. Off from there I went to Brantford. Now, this is where Chief Joseph Brant had the Six Nations. It's where Pauline Johnson had lunch, Mrs. Gretzky had Wayne, and Alexander Graham Bell had an idea that meant that someday people would be able to phone you at home at supper time and annoy the hell out of you. And then I traveled to southern tip of peaceful, beautiful Georgian Bay. I arrived in Penetang-Guashing. Penetang, of course, is the gateway to Midland. And in Penetang-Guashing, I figure it's a wonderful retirement community for provincial politicians, federal politicians, and of course, I love the local veterinarian up there has a big sign, and then on the side of the building has another big sign that says taxidermy. And I said, "What's with the two signs?" He said, "Either way, you get your dog back." Not too far from Penetang, we find Orillia. Now, the challenge for a person living in Orillia is to find a job, and when they do, it's usually in Barrie. But Orillia is the home of the birthplace of the legendary Gordon Lightfoot. Here's a kid who was a bellhop at the famous Fern Resort on the shores of Lake Couchiching. And his first musical experience was a baritone in an annoying barbershop quartet. Who'd have ever thunk he would go on to become an international star? Heading further north, I visited North Bay, the birthplace of the common sense revolution. Yeah, you can see the evidence today. The massage parlor is self-serve. Several miles northwest of the city of Sudbury, home of Inco and the Big Nickel. Now, one time I said, Sudbury is famous for hookers and hockey players. My cousin says, I'll have you know my wife comes from Sudbury. Oh, I said, what position does she play? Niagara Falls, a bride's second biggest disappointment. Not far from Niagara is the beautiful town of Welland. Now, it's a town that will not tolerate anyone disturbing the shipping through their canals, so it's no place to be if you're a ship disturber. Then I was off to Hamilton. Now, there's a city. It's got a police force, a coliseum, and a Sheila, all named cops. And I haven't forgotten, further east down the QEW, Toronto, the capital city of Ontario. You know, Toronto is a full-bodied city with Yonge Street as its spine, Thompson Hall as its belly, City Hall as its heart, and the CN Tower as its thermometer. Toronto is a city that chose a squirrel for its mascot. Yeah, and it's now become a haven for nuts. It's a diverse city where conservative Jews and Protestant Gentiles set aside their differences and share the same Portuguese Catholic cleaning lady. And it's also a city of loyal hockey fans who demand nothing of their team and get it. Hockey game is the best game you can name. And further east, if you enter the province of Quebec, you're probably heading for Montreal. Bienvenue, the site of the world's greatest jazz festival, home of Cirque du Soleil, birthplace of Oscar Peterson, not to mention Celine Dion, and home to three great cultures, Haitian, Greek, and Quebecois. Jeanne d'Arc, I speak all languages, that means there's no light in the men's room. Quebec, a province steeped in tradition. It's a former French colony that has managed to retain and build upon its magnificent strong links to its French history, lifestyle, and culture. Born in Montreal, Leonard Cohen, Canada's most famous poet-songwriter, has had his songs covered by hundreds of artists worldwide.